Now, I thought since my REM ranking video did so well, meaning about 50% of you hated it, and some said they would never listen again. Well, you're missing out because I'm going to try it again, this time with another band who are not college rock staples at all. They were definitely a pop act. And when they burst out of the scene from New Zealand, we kind of didn't know what we were getting. And we all sort of collectively liked it a lot. We're talking about Crowded House, one of my favorite bands of all time. Neil Finn, the lead guy, lead singer, lead songwriter, is quite possibly the greatest songwriter of my generation. And that's throwing in Tom Petty, and that's throwing in Will Hoge and people that I love that you don't even know. Neil Finn is the real deal, and if you don't believe me, just go listen to some of his stuff. We're going to get through every album, just the main albums, 8 of them. I know they have a B-sides thing. I forget the name of it, but it's very, very good. And they have a live one from their final show the first time they left, which is also an amazing listen. And if you get a chance to listen to that or even see the video, that's even better because it's very heartfelt. They played it on the lawn, I guess, of the Sydney Opera House, and it's really, really good. Anyways, they're from New Zealand, not Australia. A lot of people get that confused, but they're complete Kiwis. I think at least 2 of the 3 were, and maybe I'm wrong. They might just be Neil Finn. Anyways, Crowded House, they're one of those bands that doesn't really sit still, like in time. On the surface, they sound like pure pop craftsmanship, and that's true. There's clean melodies. The hooks are often perfect and sometimes hidden, and which is great. The harmonies are so easy. The longer you sit with their music, the more you realize there's always something kind of off-center underneath. It's not like a Richard Marx pop song, but there's always something unique in there. There's nothing there that's really paint by numbers. The closest they might have come with that would be like Distant Sun, maybe is like the closest, but yeah, their stuff always has an edge to it in some way. There's something emotional, something that was unresolved. Neil Finn doesn't write songs that just sound good in the moment. He writes songs that they feel like they were kind of already there, and he kind of rediscovered them. And again, when you listen to some of this stuff, it's just, they're very good with repeated listenings, because there's a lot of times I'll find a hook in something from an album, 20 years ago. It's like, I did not even realize that was there. And I love that about them. He's just, translating something that kind of existed already. So this isn't just a ranking of albums. It's kind of a walk through their career, sort of, that, keeps shifting shape from the polished beginnings to the emotional depth. And then I want to say collapse, but they didn't really collapse. They just kind of took some time off. Never really said they were breaking up. There was never any animosity, but then they reinvented themselves later, from clarity to reflection, some of it based on tragedy, and we'll have to get to that. We're going to go from the worst to the best, but the real story is how consistent the emotional thread is enduring all their stuff. There's nothing really light in their catalog, which I find great. So number 8, bottom of the list, this is Gravity Stairs. It's the latest one that came out in 2024. When I saw them in concert, I saw them for the Dreamers Are Waiting album, but they did about 5 songs from Gravity Stairs, which kind of ticked me off at the time because I didn't know the songs. But now that I do know the songs, I kind of wish I knew the songs back then. It would have made it a better experience. But this is Crowded House in its most modern form. Experienced, right? And completely unhurried. There's really no reason for them to prove anything. The band includes Neil, his sons Liam and Elroy on guitar and drums, longtime bassist and only bassist Mick Seymour, and keyboard and producer Mitchell Froome, who produced their first 3 albums, I do believe. He was married to Suzanne Vega for a while, and he produced some of her stuff, produced Los Lobos' Kiko, which is also a great record. He gets a bad rep sometimes for, kind of throwing the kitchen sink in his production work. I like it a lot, especially on Kiko. There's no urgency in this record. There's no attempt to kind of recreate the energy of the past. Instead, it feels like a band looking kind of at its own history from a distance, right? Songs like Oh Hi and The Howl, they kind of drift along rather than, push hard. And there's kind of a quiet beauty in all that, but there's also a lack of friction, right? Crowded House, at their best, always had some kind of tension running through the melodies. This one's a kind of a very nice album. In the past, they'd have joy and sadness kind of overlapping in the same lyric. I hear things feel smoother, more observational. It's not a bad record at all. It just feels like a band that's already said its loudest thing, I guess, and now kind of speaking in a softer voice, maybe backed with more wisdom. And I'll have to re-listen to that now. The album cover looks like a Beatles album cover. It looks like, oh God, what's the one? Revolver. It looks like it. I'd give this album, if only for the song Teenage Summer. It had a different name before that. And then someone said, well, why are you calling it that? Why don't you just call it Teenage Summer? Because that's like the hook. And they're like, oh, I didn't even think about that. I'm like, how did you not think about that? But Teenage Summer, The Howl is fantastic. That one was written by Liam Finn, and Liam, I believe, sings it, which is amazing because he sounds exactly like Neil. And I have said, if they want to do a menudo, and when Neil passes on, just have Liam take over the band, I'd go to see that tomorrow. And then another song in there called Some Greater Plan. Those are classic Crowded House tunes, which is kind of what their later work would be. They'd have like 3 or 4 really good ones that could add to it. Nothing top to bottom great, but always very dependable. So that brings us to number 7, one step above Gravity Stairs. Fresh Dreamers Are Waiting. This was in 2021. This is the tour that I got to see them on, the only time I got to see them in concert. This record, it marks the return of Crowded House after years away, but it's not quite a continuation of the old story. It's more like a reintroduction. Neil Finn, he brought his sons, like I said, into the fold, turning the band into something more generational, more collaborative in a different way. There's some energy here, especially tracks like To the Island, which feels like, a statement of arrival, but there's also a sense that the band is still figuring out what it is in this form. It doesn't fully lock into the emotional identity that defined the classic era, but they were kind of embarking on a new era here, which I found kind of interesting. It's interesting, it's warm, but it doesn't quite become essential. A couple of songs do. Good songs on this album. Bad Times Good it opens the record with a song that they could have easily taken that from Temple of Low Men. It's really, really good. To the Island, like I said, obvious nod to their home island of New Zealand. Sweet Tooth shows why people compare Neil Finn to Paul McCartney. And a sneaky good one on this album is a song called Start of Something. That one just gently comes out. It creeps along like a melody that gets stuck in your head and refuses to go away. I just love that song. It's a pretty good record. It's not one I really ever go back to, but because I've seen a lot of it live, it does mean a lot to me. So number 6, I have Time on Earth. This is from 2007. This one, it carries a different weight. This is the comeback record, but it arrives from the shadow and the loss, the death of drummer Paul Hester. Took his own life, which you hate to hear that. It seemed like a happy life, and sometimes those are the ones that have the most issues going on. It hangs over this period in a way that isn't often spoken directly. Well, one song kind of does, but it's always felt. The music, it reflects that absence. Don't Stop Now opens things with propelling motion, but it feels like a continuation rather than a renewal. Other tracks lean into the reflection and distance as if the band is trying to reconnect with something that has fundamentally changed. And there's only 3 of them at first, and so when one of them's gone, it's like losing more than an arm, right? It's a big deal. It's not a return to form. It's a return through experience, I guess. That alone makes it more emotionally significant than the records below it. Outside of Don't Stop Now, the opener, Nobody Wants To, that's the one that kind of feels like it's about Paul Hester. Closer, People Are Sons. It's interesting. Don't Stop Now is pure Crowded House greatness, but Nobody Wants To opens the album. People Are Sons closes the album, and those are my 2 other favorites on the album. I just figured that out. And those are the only ones I really revisit from time to time, which is crazy because I was so excited when this album was announced, but in execution just wasn't quite what I was looking for. But then comes Intriguer, which was the follow-up. It came out in 2010. It's an album that's almost too well put together for its own good. Everything's polished, everything's professionally executed. Tracks like Saturday Sun show that the songwriting still there. The emotional sharp edges are missing. And maybe that's just because they're getting older and artists do that. They kind of lose their edge as they go. But Crowded House has always worked best when there's a sense of instability under the surface. And I don't mean band instability. I mean just lyrically. They've always kind of come across that way to me. Nothing really breaks through the surface in a way that lingers in this album. It's pleasant, but it doesn't haunt you. Mark Sherrod plays drums on this album, and Mark Hart rejoined the band from his time with them on the wonderful Together Alone. Hot tracks on this one, Saturday Sun. It's a banger. That's a Crowded House in rock mode, and it works. The only one I really think is essential, though, is Either Side of the World. That song, it sounds like it starts on a pillow of clouds and it just never comes down. That's essential, Crowded House. So if I put together a Spotify playlist, that would be on them. When we move into Together Alone, this is the one from 1993. Everything starts to open up here. It's spacious. This one does sound like an alternative record if you give it a chance. It's atmospheric. It feels physically removed from the earlier Crowded House sound. It was recorded in New Zealand, and it carries a sense of isolation, I think, because of that. Songs like Distant Sun and Private Universe, they feel expansive, almost, cinematic in how they unfold, especially like Private Universe. That one, it starts building and it never stops building, but it never really gets built by the end of it. I love that song. There's more air in the arrangements, more space in between the notes. It's a transitional record because you can kind of feel something shifting inside the band. This one they brought Mark Hart on as a full-time member, I do believe. So it's 4 of them at this point. But the classic run was starting to loosen, and if no one is saying it yet, it's still happening. But it's okay because it signals I think a more interesting turn that's later to come. Almost every song is great on this record. The Kari Kari opens the show. I think it's the name of the beach in New Zealand. In My Command is so Beatles, it hurts, and in the best way. Fingers of Love and Pineapple Head have become classics, and I highly recommend this very alternative sounding album. Then we arrive at number 3, the self-titled debut from 1986. And this is, if I get any pushback, this is where it'll come. This is one of those rare first albums that sounds completely formed from the very beginning. There's no sense of experimentation or hesitation. It just arrives. Don't Dream It's Over, obvious landmark, but the rest of the record is just as consistent. Something So Strong, great song. World Where You Live, I love that one. Mean to Me is biting, and I've always loved how it's I don't know. It's a funny song, really, if you know the story behind it and everything. Everything is clean. It's direct. It's emotionally accessible without feeling too into its feelings. It's a remarkable debut. It sets the foundation for everything that comes after it. But even here, you can sense they haven't reached the depths that they'll eventually find. And I got to admit, when they played Don't Dream It's Over, when I saw them in concert, I kind of checked out. That one has almost become bigger than the band, and I've heard it a billion times. I love the song. I just don't need to hear it again when I saw them live. I love this album so much. It's hard for me to say that Don't Dream It's Over is the one that I skip when I play the record, but it's kind of been every breath you take at this point. It belongs to the world now. Sixpence None the Richer, they do a cover of it that made you realize how much better the Crowded House version is. So yeah, it's still great. Above that, I have Temple of Low Men from 1988. This one, I wanted to put it number 1 so bad because I love this album. It's where they become emotionally serious in a different way. The debut was sharp and immediate, but this record goes deeper and darker and more internal. There's less emphasis on bright pop and more focus on emotional weight, which I dug. Better Be Home Soon, obvious centerpiece, could have been on the first record. But the real strength of the album is how restrained it often is, like Into Temptation. It doesn't push for impact. I think it's just brushes, lightly brushing the drum heads. There's no snare at all except for the brushes. It's great. This is where Neil Finn starts writing like someone who understands emotional distance, not just emotional expression. Kind of feel like he might have had a rough time with the family at that point. I don't want to say that for sure, but it sounds like it. It's a quieter kind of complexity, but a powerful one. I Feel Possessed is just understated greatness. And When You Come is what they opened up with. The one time I got to see him in concert, and it just shook the rafters off of the place. It sounded so good. after all these years later, and I was glad they leaned so much into Temple of Low Men. They played like 4. It is the classic case of second album being better than the first, but no one really treats it like such. You might not like this, but much like Hootie and the Blowfish with Fairweather Johnson, but like Hootie and the Blowfish, Crowded House also came out with a much improved third album, and that album is, and number 1 is Woodface from 1991. This one sits at number 1. This is the peak, not just of Crowded House, but of this entire creative section of Neil Finn's writing life. And what makes Woodface so special, it isn't just a band album, it's a collision of 2 creative forces, because Neil Finn and Tim Finn were working together in a way that only briefly existed. They were supposed to make this as a Finn Brothers album, but I don't know if the record label said this stuff is too good. We're not going to bury that. We're going to try to market this. But that collaboration kind of changed everything. The harmonies became richer. I've always said, if you have siblings or people who are related that harmonize together, that just always, you can always tell that it's just natural. And the collaboration, it changed everything. The harmonies became richer. The emotional range expanded. Songwriting feels almost effortless in its beauty, almost like they could kind of bounce off each other's ideas and take it to the next step. It's great. It's really, really good. Follow Your Feet is devastating in its simplicity. One of my favorite songs of all time, and the production on that song is not even second rate at all. It is so good. 4 Seasons in One Day captures emotional instability with elegance, right? I like that. Weather With You, deceptively light, but structurally, it is flawless. It's only natural. It carries that perfect balance of optimism, and that defines the best of Crowded House sometimes. They just don't get noticed here. They're huge everywhere else, apparently. Everything aligned on this record in a way that kind of feels temporary, like there's no way they could have kept this going, and it did. Tim Finn left, the chemistry changed, and the band never quite captured that exact feeling again. And like I said, they tried doing some solo stuff together, but didn't quite do the same. And that's why it kind of sits at the top, not just because it's their best work, because it captures something that's really unrepeatable. I remember when it came out, I was in Nebraska and I liked it. And I took it for a spin or two. It took me a spin or two to love it. But once I did come to love it, I stayed loving it, and I still do to this day. There's not a bad song on this record. I'll even defend Italian Plastic and There Goes God. Those are 2 that are kind of goofy, but they still stand up. The Finn Brothers, their solo album or their collaborative albums later, not quite the same. All day, or Woodface, all day long. I love that. So that's my ranking of Crowded House. What did I get wrong? I think this is fairly easy to assess, as almost every album has some really good stuff on it. I know they aren't classic alternative, obviously. They certainly aren't college rock. But in terms of songwriting, weren't none better than Neil Finn, and I will stand by that until somebody comes along and knocks them off. And for a band that changed shapes so many times, well, that speaks to Neil and his vision and his leadership, because he's the only constant member outside of the bass player. Man, what great stuff. They're never flat. They always come with something interesting. I love that about them, and I love Neil Finn. Looking back across this whole list, what stands out isn't just the evolution of the sound, but the consistency and the emotional intent. I remember when I saw them in concert, I was like, they're taking songs from almost from 40 years ago and blending them with the new songs, and they all sound like they fit, and they're all from different eras. And I remember seeing REM on the Up tour, and they played the songs from Up, and it just didn't fit right. And then I don't know. Some bands, it's easier to make that happen. But there's always that same underlying voice, always trying to make sense of something that's just out of reach. And that's what's great about Crowded House. And that's what makes Crowded House more than just a great pop band. It's what makes them enduring. And I'll never get tired of them, and I hope they keep on doing it. So, and that's my countdown. Again, what I get wrong, what I get right. Give me your favorite Crowded House song, your favorite Crowded House album, since I'm ranking albums. Did you ever see them live? I wish I could have seen them more often than I did, but I don't think they ever really played around me. They might have played Atlanta. I think they played in Charleston one time at a rock club when I was stationed in Arkansas. I would have been there. But anyways, make sure you like, subscribe. That does help the channel. Tell your friends, tell your enemies. I have a long list of alternative and some not so alternative artists to get to. So go out, be nice to people just randomly, and I will see you guys on the next one. Take care.